Hey everyone, welcome to this week's conversation. I appreciate you tuning in. My guest tonight is as genuine, real, and authentic as it gets as a songwriter, and her incredible voice has given a voice to millions of Americans. Please welcome to the conversation singer, songwriter, and proud Kentucky native, Mary Kutter. Mary, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. What an introduction. My goodness. Well, it's good to be here.
Well, I had to come up with an introduction that was as worthy as it needed to be for you because this is a conversation, Mary, I've been looking forward to for quite some time. And I
Same.
really appreciate you taking the time because if there's one thing I know about you, 2025 has been an amazing year. A lot of firsts have recently happened. A couple more are coming soon. And I want to make sure we talk about all of it. But if you don't mind, what I'd love to do is take a little bit of a trip back. Let's go back to Kentucky and let's talk a little bit about when and where it was that your musical journey began.
Oh, I love that. Well, yeah, I am born and raised in Kentucky, right in the middle of the state. So if any of the listeners have been to Kentucky, to like Louisville or Lexington, I grew up an hour from both of those spots, right in the heart of the state where all the bourbon's made.
Ah,
And literally, whenever I go home, uh, once I start smelling bourbon, I'm like, I'm almost back. So anyway, I had an incredible childhood. I grew up on a farm. I was really active in 4-H, and I was really active in church. If the church doors were open, my honey was in there, and I was singing, at church, in the choir, different special music and the praise team. But although Kentucky, where I grew up, is so close to Nashville,
hmm,
it might as well have been Australia. I didn't know nothing about how to get into the music industry or anything like that, but it's just like everything else. I started singing in church. I got asked to sing at a festival, at a county fair, and before I knew it, I started singing a bunch of cover gigs
wow.
in the area and at different jamborees. And there was a feller who was right outside of Louisville, Kentucky, who owned a couple of stations, radio stations, and a TV station. And we had met backstage at one of the festivals I was singing at. And, we met each other, talked for a couple minutes, and a couple months later, we ran into each other again. And then again. And then one day he called me up. He said, "Hey, can you come by my office? I want to talk to you about something." And I was thinking it was going to maybe be, I was going to get invited to open for, a show or something that the radio station might be hosting. But I sit in his office and he tells me that he wants to start a music variety show and he wanted to have a local person host
Huh.
it, and he offered me the job, and I had zero experience in that world, like zero. And I remember I called my dad afterwards and I was like, I just don't know, and I was at this point I was singing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays every week. I was doing a bunch of gigs all in the area, and I was having a blast. And he was like, "Hey, you don't know what this might do for you. Might open a bunch of doors up." And so I was like, "You know what, you're right." And I took the job, and I found out real quick that I started booking the guests as well, kind of like
Okay.
what you do. I have such huge respect for what you do because there's a lot of pieces that
Oof.
folks don't even know that go into the behind the scenes work. I
Yes.
mean, there's a lot of it's like Tetris with the schedules of the guests and then the organization of figuring out who goes where. And
Oh,
then of
yeah.
course you plan the show, then all that stuff. Anyway, and I started booking different guests that were on their radio tour coming up from Nashville, and as also different songwriters that had written hits that wanted to play their songs, and they would perform, and I would interview them. And very long story short, that was the door that kind of opened the door to Nashville. And I started writing with different folks that had been on the show. And of course, mind you, I didn't know much of anything with writing songs, but people started asking me, like, "Well, do you write songs?" And of course, like most of us, we've written a song or two in our bedroom,
Yeah.
growing up. And I started making trips back and forth to Nashville at that point. And just kind of like the singing at church to festivals to county fairs, I would write with Billy Bob, and Billy would say, "Oh, you need to write with Becky. You write with Becky. Oh, you need to write with Sally." And before I knew it, I was down here all the time, just driving back and forth in my old Buick that should not have been driving long distances at that point. And that was how really the bridge happened from Kentucky to Nashville. And I look back sometimes and I think about, man, if I had not taken that gig at the radio station, I don't know if I'd be in Nashville. And honestly, I don't even know what I would be doing now because, I look back and obviously in 2020, everything would have shut down. All of my gigs would have dried up just like everyone else's did.
Yeah.
And that was my world back then, just doing cover gigs. And so it is kind of crazy how, God opens and closes doors.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we also appreciate our first and longest running sponsor of the show, Tom and his team of insurance professionals at the Malin Agency. If world class customer service and doing business with someone you can trust is important to you, give Tom and his team a call today for all your insurance needs. No, absolutely. And I was curious as to when and how the songwriting aspect came into things because you had some tremendous success on that side of the studio as well, just writing, and that's something that I just wanted to make sure we kind of covered all those
Well,
bases
thank you.
because you're definitely a multi-tool threat, when it comes to music. But to your point, I do believe everything happens for a reason. And one of the things I was curious about is all these things are happening. Was there a moment when you kind of said to yourself, you know what, whether it's writing, singing, hosting the show, whatever it was, or the combination that you said music in whatever form it takes is going to be the career path for me, where you just kind of jumped in and said, I'm all in?
100%. I knew I always wanted to do music. And I think in my noggin, I always knew I wanted to end up being on the stage singing songs. That's kind of how it started. But the radio show gig opened up. I started writing with folks down in Nashville. I moved down to Nashville, and right after I moved to Nashville, I started hosting different writers' nights
Hmm.
downtown to pay my bills. And I hosted a whole bunch of shows, and this was right before the pandemic hit. And that was really a PhD in just the music industry, songwriting. I remember the last show I'd hosted, I did that one for 10 months. I did it every week. We would have 12 guests on every week, and they would get up, play their songs acoustic, and we'd have 12 guests. And I
Wow.
remember in the span of 10 months, we had just under 500 different people play. And I'm not even exaggerating. I could count on one hand people that weren't great. I mean, honestly, everyone was talented. And I remember one night, of course, I would watch the folks whenever they were performing. And I remember being in the back. I just introduced the next round of people. I had my arms crossed and I was watching them. And I thought to myself, and I look around and I think to myself, it was packed. We really had a really exciting, every week it would just be packed with people networking and hearing the music. And I thought to myself, this looks like a movie set. Everyone's beautiful. These songs are gorgeous. Like, oh my gosh. And it really hit me, the competition. And
Yeah.
I think it was kind of always a situation where, I wasn't really sure what I needed to do to make my dreams come true, but these doors were opening, and I was just walking through them and doing the best I could with what I had at the time. And when the pandemic happened and the world shut down, back to my dad again. I remember I called him up and I told him how, everyone was canceling everything in town. They had just canceled the basketball tournament. That's when I knew something was going on,
Oh, yeah.
And in Kentucky, that's a big deal.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he said to me, he said, Mary, you need to think about what you can actually have control over during this time. He very wise feller. And I thought to myself, well, what is that? And I thought, you know what? I can Zoom write. And literally started that following Monday, I started writing 2 to 3 times a day, anyone that would Zoom right with me 7 days a week. And I did that truly through the entire pandemic. And it was during that time that I started writing songs that started to move the dial a little bit for me.
Hmm.
Some of the songs I was writing for other artists to sing, they got record deals, and they were in that next batch of people, really the first wave of the folks that use social media, like Bailey Zimmerman, Nate
Yeah.
Smith, Alexandra Kay. And I was writing with those artists that were hopping on TikTok. And most of Music Row at that point down in Nashville, the established writers were not writing with these artists. It was still kind of a, what is this TikTok thing? I
Yeah.
was like, put me in, coach, and I was writing so much. And it was one of those things that once again, I didn't know totally how to get where I needed to go, but I saw an opportunity and I knew I had at least the ability to write songs, and people wanted to write songs, and it was really kind of crazy.
Well, what would you say are some of the lessons that you learned as a writer? Because, like you said, you kind of jumped in and you had maybe only written a couple songs as as a kid
Yeah.
or whatever this situation may have been at the time. And I also know before we turned the camera on, we were talking about some mutual people that we know. And I remember Allie Colleen telling me once that
Mm.
when she's in a room writing, she wants to be the worst one in the room because then she can only get better. And you're
Yep.
down there with like the all-star team of writers. And like you said, everybody's beautiful, everybody's talented. But what were maybe some of the key lessons you learned as a writer? Because that's one of the things that really grabbed me about your music
Mm.
was the lyrics. Just like
Thank
many
you.
decades ago, Chris Ledoux, who brought me into it with his stories about being a cowboy in the rodeo. And here's a kid from Philly that's listening to these words and like, oh my God, he's painting pictures with his
Mhm.
words. And you have that same ability. So, what are some of those lessons that you learned early on that help you develop into the incredible writer that you are?
That means so much to me. Thank you very much. Truly. And Chris is so talented. So even to be in the same sentence as him, that means a lot to me. I definitely learned a lot about, when I was writing for other artists, I was helping tell their story. That's
Hmm.
kind of what my role was in the room, right? And everyone has different stories that they want to tell. And I remember one of the artists I was writing a bunch with, got a couple cuts with, he told me once, he said, you know what? Once you've written enough songs, you can write anything with this, and it can be like a heady, smart, clever song, and that's great, but it's not going to move the dial unless it comes from here, from your heart. And at the time, I was like, okay, that sounds a little bit dramatic, but okay. But then I started realizing, at the end of 2023, I had really dug into my morning routine, which I still do today. I get up at 5 a.m. every day. I run 5 miles. I solo write. I journal. I read all before my morning writing session.
Wow.
And it was during that time that I really put blinders on. I thought, you know what? Who cares, what Nashville or Music Row thinks about these songs I'm writing? I want to write songs that say something and that matter to me, even if they don't do anything commercially. And that might sound kind of cheesy, but that's just where I was at the time.
Yeah.
And I found that it was during that era, it was kind of the kickoff of starting to tell my own story. And where I grew up, it is the sticks. It really is. And it was a little bit of a culture shock whenever I moved to Nashville. I had never been to a place where I mean, literally, you walk outside. I live in an apartment building now, truly in the heart of Nashville, right close to, right behind Music Row, actually. And, I can walk out of my apartment building and there's restaurants, there's bars,
Yeah.
there's lights, there's skylines. There's nothing like that where I'm from. And whenever I first moved to Nashville, I'm not going to lie to you, I was a little bit taken back a little bit, like, whoa, whoa. And for the first time, whenever I moved to Nashville, I encountered, um, just a whole new wave of people in the best way. Lots of wonderful people here, but I met people and I'm talking massive wealth, as in their family has multiple jets. They'll fly to Paris for the weekend, that kind of thing, that were pursuing music. I met people that came from all different countries and stuff. It was just kind of like a whoa thing. And, I found myself, like we said earlier, I was in these different writing rooms that I was so blessed to be in and I loved being a part of. And I was writing these other people's stories and kind of jumping into the swimming pool where they were born and raised. But there was something very cool about kind of putting my boots back on and going back into Kentucky side of my brain and my heart whenever I started writing songs. And it's wild to me how it seems like whenever I did that and I just started writing, I feel like the word authenticity and authentic is so that's just a word people just throw around. But
Yeah.
it seems like when I really decided, you know what, this is who I am. I'm country. I'm proud of where I'm from. People either like it or they don't. I know my voice, the way I sing and the way I talk it's a lot more different than maybe some other people, and they either like it or
Mhm.
they don't, and that's awesome. But it seemed like things really started pedaling down after that, and I'll tell you what, it's very freeing.
I can only imagine. In fact, Mary, I was going to ask you when you started writing more for yourself, I can't help but think that the process that, like you said, you'd go home, you kind of just your mindset, everything is, it's got to be a whole different experience. Just writing your own
Mhm.
truth and writing your own
For sure.
stories as compared to trying to write something that you think would be a good fit for someone else. It's got to be
100%.
completely different.
And this was the thing too, as well. So I started, whenever I started writing songs for me to sing, I decided because I had seen the probably the most painful part about being a songwriter in Nashville, writing for other artists, is the hard drive sitting on your laptop or phone with all these songs collecting digital dust. It is a thing. You'll write a song, everyone's like, this is a hit song. Then the artist you write it with and for, they decide to go a different direction, or they get dropped, or, whatever happens, And there's literally, when I tell you, thousands of songs in this town that are just no one's ever going to hear. Well, so I thought to myself, because I had seen, like I said earlier, a lot of the artists that I started getting cuts with, they had popped off on social media first. And I thought to myself, you know what? I am a songwriter first, what would happen if I started just posting little snippets of the song I'd written that day? And that being said, it changed the whole mindset of whenever I was in the writing room because I thought to myself, you know what? I'm putting my neck on the chopping block a little bit because I'm literally, whatever we write in this room, y'all, I'm going to be posting online and maybe 5 people will see it. Maybe 5 million people will see it. I don't know.
Right.
But my mama always taught me, she's always been like, be careful what you post online because it will always be there. So I've always kind of had that mindset, for better or for worse. But it definitely did change the way I viewed writing songs for myself to sing, because I knew that folks were probably going to hear it. Because I've posted, I'd say probably three-fourths of the songs that, I've written, for myself.
Well, Mary, I will tell you one thing that jumps out to me, having seen so many of the clips that you've put out, but both portions of songs and full song videos. And I think in today's world, the clips is obviously these last few years is the way to go. And then you kind of whet people's appetite and then they're going to want more and want more. But something I was thinking about as you were saying that, and whether it's music or some of the people that I've talked to who they put it out there as to who they are and what they are. And even over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of comedians, and there's a similar thing with them where they say, until you put yourself out there as to who you are and what you are and really are yourself, you're always going to look like you're trying to either appeal to somebody or it's not going to be genuine. Like you
Yeah.
said, that
Right.
word before, authentic. So what I've noticed is with some folks that have really made it big is they said you put yourself out there as to who you are and your people will find you.
I love that. I
And
love that.
yeah, there will be some detractors, God only knows, in social media, no matter what. If you gave everybody $1 million, some of them would complain that their tax bracket went up. So, it's just the way it is.
I never thought about it that way. That's
Yeah.
true.
But I really think you are a great example of someone who has put it out there. This is who you are. You're singing about where you're from and family members, the town, like, and then people. And here's the thing: I'm in Philadelphia. Now, my son lived in Louisville for a little while, for a couple of years. He just moved
Yep.
with his wife to Orlando earlier this year. So I was
Uh-huh.
there a couple times, and I smelled the bourbon too.
Yep. Yep.
Definitely,
You don't
definitely like
forget it,
that.
do you?
No, no, no. And at the Old Forester Distillery was my favorite spot and my favorite stop.
Oh,
But and I didn't know there were so many years, 1897, 1910, 1920.
isn't
Anyway,
that
I digress.
crazy? Yes, it's
Yeah,
really wild. That was a
yeah.
good spot for him to be living for a while. And now you got an even better spot, I guess, going down to Florida for vacation and see
Oh
your
yeah.
son.
No, absolutely. But like I said, it's just seeing that where I'm from and living most of my life, but I can identify with what you're
Mm,
putting out there because you're singing about
wow.
real people, real situations, and just, putting it out there. So I want to commend you for that. And I'm
Thank you.
also, you know, I, I think that's a reason, actually, I know that's a reason why you've seen some of the numbers over these last couple of years. I mean, I'm seeing tens of millions of streams of your songs, millions of hits on all the different socials. So clearly it's resonating. And another thing you do that's pretty unusual is you come out with a lot of great songs. I'm, s-
You.
I was thinking about how to say this because I don't want it to come off the wrong way. Because when I say that, like, I think everyone's better than the last, I don't want to disrespect the last. So I'll say
Mhm.
everyone is
Yeah.
just as good or better than the last. How are you able to do it so consistently?
Man, you are so kind. And also, by the way, you better watch out, or this hat is going to get very tight because my head's getting bigger as I sit here on your show. You know what I'm saying? Well, this is the thing, sugar. Straight up, before you got to think about for the last couple of years, what was Mary Cutter doing? She was writing songs nonstop for other acts. So I think some of it, I
Uh,
mean, I do think it's kind of a muscle a little bit where it's I mean, I get up in the morning at 5 a.m. I do my journal. I solo write. I run 5 miles. It's not even something I even think about anymore. It's the same thing with writing songs. Now, that being said, though, you can write a lot of filler songs, you know what I'm saying, that are filler, Filler, not feeler like you feel it. You know what
right.
I'm saying? You got to always make sure you're writing something real, you know? But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things to talk about. And I do find myself wanting to write, and I'm more attracted two songs, it seems like, that kind of say something. There's nothing wrong with writing a song about being brokenhearted and at the bar drinking a drink and doing your thing. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. But I don't know if I just got my fill of it whenever I was writing songs the last couple of years for other folks or what, but I really love writing about things that are different and say something. And it's like, oh, whoa, wait, what? Are we talking about this really? You know, and what's been really crazy is whenever you can write a song that really says something, but it's still up tempo enough that you could run to it. You know what I'm saying? That's a
Yes.
weird metric. That's a weird metric, but I do find myself, just falling in love with that process. And I just feel so blessed where I'm from. Truly, most people, they're working on the line for 12 hours, then they go home
Yeah.
and they work on their farm and they take care of the kids and they go to bed and they get up, they feed their cattle or whatever, then they go to the line, work for 12 hours. And it's, I feel like honestly, if we're being real about it, I feel like I'm on a gravy train. You know, I wake up in the morning, I do my thing, I write songs, I get to post them, I get to see if people like a song or not. They let you know real quick, you know? But it's all relative. But that means a lot to me that you would say that. That really is very kind.
Well, and I mean it because I will say this as someone who's on a very small scale, written a lot of songs over the years and had some local airplay back in the day. But one of the things I always felt was a song should make you feel something, think something, or make
Mm.
you move. A
Love.
lot of your songs do all of the above.
Thank
And
you.
and I think that's when you know it's really something special because it's got all those things going at once. And you want to go back and listen again because you're like, wait, did I catch that part? Wait, let me hear the again. Whoa. And then you start
Oh,
thinking again, and then you start feeling again. And that's what makes you go back and just replay it over and over again. So that
thank
that to
you.
me is really special when you can kind of combine those in not just one or two songs, but in so many as you've done. And I think that's
Thank
why
you.
and Mary, I have to say, and sure, I mean, I think that I can't help but think that's why this year, 2025, some things are finally starting to pay off for you. Some amazing first, the Sturgis bike rally, and some of the clips you shot from there, by the way. I don't know that I've seen someone having so much fun
Oh,
as I
so
did
much fun.
with some of those clips, right? So you're opening, I think, for Hank Williams Jr. there, right? So
Yes.
you're out there in Sturgis. You just had, just not too long before we're taping this conversation, your first arena show. Then you're
Yes.
hanging out there for hours, signing everything, taking pictures with everybody, and making everybody feel special. And you've got something else that's a first coming up real soon, we're going to get to. But I have to ask you this. If you were to think about 2025, your life in 2025 being a documentary,
Mm.
what would go in the film?
Wow. That's pretty incredible. I think a lot of it would be finding out something and rolling with it. I remember back in March, it's so crazy. I'd been talking to someone a week before, and we had that whole, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? And I said to them, I said, man, I would love to go to Germany. My grandma, she grew up there. She came over on the boat after World War II, and that's a whole crazy story. And then the other side, they're from Germany too, and I still have a lot of family over there. And I've just always wanted to go over there. And I was like, but you know what? Let's be real. My pockets ain't got the money to go over there right now. So it's going to be a couple of years. Well, lo and behold, less than a week later, I'm in a writing session and I get a call. Long story short, there was this big festival that happens every year called C to C, and one of the artists had gotten sick. that was supposed to do a bunch of slots. It's kind of like CMA Fest, but in Germany. And
Ah,
anyway, they were
okay.
like, "Hey, can you be on a plane tomorrow morning?" And I was like, "Huh? Yes." And I literally got off the phone. I went to TJ Maxx. I got a suitcase, and I was calling my parents. I was like, "You won't believe this." I called my grandma. She called up her sister. It was like, "You got to get ready for Mary coming." Anyway, it was crazy, and it was so much fun. But this is this thing where, it's wild. I got a text message from a buddy this past weekend who I hadn't seen in, gosh, probably around a year. And he said, "Mary, do you realize a year ago today you were opening up for this incredible band called A Thousand Horses? They're a Southern
Ah,
rock band."
yeah.
Well, this gives me goosebumps. His name is Luke, my friend, that had texted me, and he said, "It's so crazy. A year ago, literally it was this week, a year ago, that we were doing that show, and they had had a conversation backstage saying, 'Next year, Mary, you're going to be playing arenas.'" And I remember thinking, that's very kind, but seems kind of crazy. Well, a couple weeks ago, I got a call from Hank Jr.'s camp, and they really liked what we did out at Sturgis, and they asked if they could, take us out, the band and me, to open for them and in Tulsa. And they said what the venue was, and I was like, "Wait, hold on, huh? Huh? The Box Center?" And I like Google. I'm like, "That's an arena," and it was so cool because this is the thing. You think about, what these things would be like. Like, I mean, for example, Germany. The arena, like you think about these things and then you actually do them and you don't know if it's going to live up to the hype in your head. You know what I'm saying? And the other night, whenever I was up there on the stage in the arena, a couple times I was singing the songs, all of a sudden I'd be like, "Whoa, I want to," it would hit me. I wouldn't say it out loud, but I was thinking that to myself. And it was so, 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 so cool. You just don't know what's around the corner. And I really do think, honestly, Sugar, um, I've done this for the, because I can get, if you haven't noticed by now, I'm like this at all times, lots of energy. And if I don't watch out, I'm like a little squirrel in the middle of the road going all over the place. I prefer to be like a bunny rabbit hopping in one direction. And that's what I tried to do this last year. But I don't think I could have even predicted, what would have been in this documentary we're talking about. And I
Yeah.
know we still got a whole other quarter left,
Yes,
which is
exactly. And
crazy.
yeah, and that brings me to my next question, which is what would have to be in the documentary, which is going to be another first, your first headlining tour, appropriately named the Breakout Tour. So tell us about what we can expect with that and how cool is that?
I'm so excited about it. And man, I'll tell you what, you hear the horror stories of different acts that maybe would go viral, then they would go play shows and no one would show up. Like, I mean, I'm friends with a lot of artists in town, a lot of writers, and it doesn't always translate to tickets. It just doesn't. And I don't know what the reason is for that. I'm not a business person. But earlier this year, I did my first headlining show down in Georgia and we sold it out. And I remember the night before it hit me, I was like, what if like one person bought all the tickets as a prank and I show up and nobody's there? But that was not the case. And it ended up being this awesome, awesome, awesome night. And when we decided to do this tour, I'm just kind of we just announced it, like literally just announced the tour. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be really fun. And a couple of the shows, that I've been doing this year, something that's been so crazy. And I got to tell you the story from back in Ohio, back in, I guess it was May. I played this show up in Hamler, Ohio. I don't know if you've ever been that way or not, but I'd used in-ears for the first time, and I didn't even know
Oh,
what they were at the top of this year. So maybe the audience won't know. So I will explain what they are in case they don't. It's kind of like um, earphones or like iPod, AirPods that you put in your
yeah.
ear through the show. And what it does is it has a metronome. And in it, so the band stays all in time, even if there's echoes and stuff in the building that you're singing at. And sometimes, you'll have like some tracks in there as well, like filler, like maybe like, a steel guitar or whatever, if you don't have that in your band. Anyway, so I was playing this show up in Ohio, and it was the first time I'd ever used in-ears. And I was kind of nervous about using them because I don't know, like, what if it stopped working in the middle or something? I just didn't know what to expect. Well, so I'm up on the stage, and I'm maybe song two or three in. And all of a sudden I'm hearing what I'm singing in my ears, but it's not my microphone. It's not that I'm thinking, uh-oh, something's going wrong with the in-ears. I'm thinking, uh-oh, we're just starting this 75-minute show and something's going on. And then I looked out and I saw that people's mouths were moving to the songs. And these were songs in the early part of the show. They weren't out yet. None of these were songs that were out yet. And I'm thinking, wait, are they singing along? And I realized they're singing the first verse and the chorus. Then the second verse is nobody's singing. Then the chorus, they come back. And this is happening for maybe 3 or 4 songs in a row. And I realized, oh my gosh, that's what I'm hearing is the people singing along. I thought it was the in ears.
Wow.
And I realized then, so my mind's just going a million miles an hour while I'm up there on stage. And I'm thinking, well, how would these people even know these songs? And I thought, oh, it's because I've been posting them, the verse chorus every day from the songwriting sessions. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so that night happens. I'm thinking that had to have been some weird one off thing in Ohio. Thank you, Ohio. Fast forward to the Georgia show. Same thing happens. Same thing. Like first verse and chorus they sing. Second verse nobody's singing because they don't know the songs until we get to like Devil's Money and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I really saw then. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a lucky son of a gun. Where this community of people, it ain't just numbers on a screen. Which obviously every artist they would be lying if they say they don't want to go viral. Of course, you want your music to be heard
Yeah.
by lots of people. But I'll tell you what, seeing the eyeballs in the audience and the mouths singing along, there's nothing like it. And what I'm expecting, this fall tour to be, I'm expecting just to be kind of like a family reunion where I'm going to be singing a lot of the songs that people, I've heard pieces of and songs that are out. And oh, I'm so excited about it. And there's gonna be some surprises along the way. I was talking to my band leader earlier today, and we're really gearing up some cool stuff. I want this to be because this is probably I think next year is gonna be a lot of exciting things in the way on the way, I should
Okay.
say. And this will probably be the last time for a little piece that it'll be kind of a VIP experience. Most of the clubs we're playing are 300 people rooms. There's one that's a 500 person seater, but most of them are 300 and a little bit below, which I kind of love because then, I'm going to get to, if I can truly give a hug to every single person there. If they want a hug, they can get one. It ain't like playing at an arena where we did that 2 hour meet and greet, after my
Yeah.
set. Before Hank had gotten up there, his plane had been delayed flying into the arena. And so they were like, stay out as long as you want to till he gets here. And so I did, and I had a blast meeting with everybody. But anyway, I realized normally, like at an arena show, you're not going to get to meet everybody,
Yeah.
and of course, once again, I'd be lying if I didn't say I want to get to that, spot where you're always playing arenas. But I am excited for this tour where literally, every single person in that crowd, we can have a conversation afterwards. We can hang out, we're going to sing these songs and it's just going to be awesome.
And I think that people see that, and that goes back to, like you said, it's an overused word, but that authenticity and that genuineness comes through not just when you're on stage, but also when you're interacting with your fans and just really making them feel special and giving them kind of a peek behind the curtain, if you will. And that to me is going to translate to every time you go back to any of those cities, even as you go to bigger venues, those same people are going to come. And then they're going to bring more people and more people. So you're probably going to have some 10 to 12-hour meet and greets at some point down the
Put me
road.
in, coach. I think it'd be so much fun. Well, I didn't even realize these longer ones we've done, it don't feel like it's been that long. I have a blast. Now, I am like the little old lady in church that they're trying to shove out of the church so they could turn off the lights on Sunday. I'm like, get out of here. We're going to go to lunch. But I just have a blast. I mean, there's so many great people to meet. And we have one thing in common, at all these shows is that we love music.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. And I feel very grateful. One of the best things about doing this line of work, and I would guess that you feel the same, is the people that we get to meet,
Yes.
And obviously there's always going to be a couple like, ooh, here and there. But for the most part, people are pretty awesome.
Absolutely. It's just the ones who aren't seem to get maybe magnified, or on social media, they seem to be spread more in the algorithm. So we need to counter that with
That's
good
true.
stuff. And just like you said, there are
Mm.
a heck of a lot more good people, genuine people out there than those knuckleheads. So,
Yeah.
Mary, I have two last questions for you. And these are questions that I actually enjoy asking everybody because it really gives me an opportunity to really get to know folks, maybe more than anything else. And the first one is I can't wait to hear your response to. When you look back at everything you've done since you were first singing in church and
Mm.
took that show hosting and writing and all the things you've done since, what are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. Wow. That's a really interesting uh okay. I have a two-part answer.
Okay.
So up to this point, I would like to think that, something I always really try to do is love on others, no matter what room I'm in. Whether, back when, I was singing at jamborees in Kentucky to the different guests I'd have on the radio show to the, writers rounds to write for other artists to now, when I'm loving on fans, I hope, I'm sure I miss the mark sometimes, but I hope that, you get to love on people. Um, and I feel like I've tried to do my best with that. Something I'm really excited about is starting with this fall tour. We're going to be doing in every single city we go to. We're going to be stopping by, depending on the city, what their needs are, either a recovery center, a homeless shelter,
Ooh,
an at-risk school before the show starts. So we're rolling to what's one of the cities? Knoxville. We're rolling to Knoxville, and we'll roll in. Obviously before sound check and all that jazz, and maybe there's an opioid center that we can swing by and talk to folks before sound check. And obviously, there's been other artists that have done that, and that's inspired me so much. And would like to leave the world a little bit of a better place than uh whenever we rolled into
yeah.
the world, and I think honestly someone that really has done a heck of a job with that is Dolly Parton.
Oh,
You think about all the good that woman has done, and it seems like um, and I've done a lot of reading on her. I've watched just about every documentary that I could get my hands on. It seems like as she went from level to level to level, she would also level to level up how she could help people,
yeah,
because, maybe, we don't have $1 million to write a check to somebody, but maybe we can, swing by and visit someone that's lonely. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we can bring food to somewhere, and there's different things. And I do realize that the more I'm doing this music thing, hopefully I'll, get to elevate what I get to do. So I think that that's going to be something that really gets you excited to wake up in the morning.
no, absolutely. And that's a great transition into
Mm,
my last question because it's something that I think how you feel when you wake up in the morning is a determining factor in how this is answered. And that is
mm,
we just look back. Now I'm going to ask you to look forward.
mm. Yep.
And you can look in as many directions as you want. But what would you say success would ultimately look like for you?
Oh, wow. I think that is going to be one thing is, man, I've really, this is going to go real heavy for a second. Okay.
Okay.
But how I was saying every morning, I get up and I journal.
Yeah.
Last week, and what I do is I do 3 pages of just stream of consciousness. This right when like literally before I even get coffee, I do this. Okay. I literally write this, and it's no telling what's going to come out of the brain when you do this. Well, I guess it was last Monday or so, maybe last Tuesday, that I was doing that. And I had just this epiphany that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. And it's kind of a heavy thought where I realized 100 years from now, I will be gone. You will be gone. Everyone we know will be gone. It will
Mm.
truly be like a clean, like picture a whiteboard, just wiped clean, whole new people, whole new culture. I mean, it really
Huh.
truly will be, no matter even how successful you are, I mean, think about, what was 100 years ago now, 1925. I can't even tell you who the top singers were back then. Obviously, that was pre Elvis doing his thing and really, and
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra breaking it open, but,
Yeah.
to where, the massive stars started hitting. But you think about like even like the biggest movie stars at that time, it's not relevant anymore,
Yeah.
and I don't mean that callously, but I've been thinking a lot about that. And so then it almost gets you thinking about, if we know that our time really is truly like, and
Mm.
it's over. I mean, it's very heavy.
Yeah. But
Man, you
true.
think about, I really hope that, no matter how much time I have left, whether that's 50 years, 70 years, 70 days. I mean, whatever, we don't know.
Yeah.
I should hope that, I keep the pedal down and chase the dreams that, are in my heart, and hopefully write something that touches other people that maybe can, even if I'm gone, can maybe stay still, because you do think, sure, we were talking about the movie stars or whatever, but some of their movies maybe influence the next generation who maybe influence the next, so there is that aspect no matter how you slice and dice it. But that is one thing that, I think about, where I've been chewing on that a lot lately. And I hope that no matter what ends up coming around the corner, that, we keep on loving on people and,
Yeah.
live life to its fullest and enjoy it.
No, absolutely. And you will leave the world a better place than you found it. And I also think that while you're here, I can't help but think that even right now, or even before today, there are people out there who've listened to your songs, maybe have come to see you perform, maybe they watch you in this conversation, and they realize, you know what? I want to be true to who I am, and whatever it is that I do, I want to do it in a way that's genuine and real. So whether they're a musician or an entertainer or a comedian or a teacher, I
Mhm.
think they can be impacted. You're going to be impacting a lot of people while you're doing what you're doing, while you're chasing those dreams in a way that I don't even know you can measure, but you're going to help people realize, be true to yourself, be true to who you are, and amazing things can happen.
Thank you, Sugar. That means a lot to me. And I guess that's the way it is with all of us, where we plant these seeds in all the interactions with our daily life. Like with your show, it's the same thing, Sugar, same thing. And we don't even know what those seeds are going to sprout to become, because we do touch so many lives every single
Yeah.
day. It's pretty cool.
No, it really is. And Mary, I'll tell you, before I close things out, I just want to say with your headlining tour coming up, I know I did look at some of the cities, and folks, be sure to check out Mary's socials, check out her website, check out and see when she's coming to a town or city near you,
Oh,
both
yeah.
in the end of 25 and hopefully a lot more to come in 26. But whenever you're within driving distance of the Philadelphia area, and I can drive pretty far, and I'll drive even farther to come see you. I just want to know when and where it is because I want to be there to meet you in person because Zoom's great, but there's nothing better than having a chance to meet you in person, and I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, same here, baby. I can't wait to give you a big hug. I really appreciate you. You are truly just a breath of fresh air.
Well, thank you so much. You made my night. I really appreciate that. And again, Mary, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me with all that you have going on. I wish you the best with each and every one of those amazing things you have going on. And folks, I want to thank you for watching. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. Be sure to check out Mary's music before to check out when she's coming to your town. And we'll see you next time.
One man's grave is another man's paycheck. Our ex-man's at our expense. Forget the coal mines, they hit a gold mine. Hooked us on 6 feet of side effects. Like a wolf dressed in sheep's clothes. The devil wore a lab coat.
This week's episode has been brought to you by Doherty and Company Insurance Services for all your business and personal insurance needs. Our friends at Tennis Addiction in Exton, PA. And the Malin Agency, where exceeding expectations is how they do business.